What's going on, guys? We've got shocks and struts on a 2012 Lexus RX350. We're gonna get right into it. As always, if you find this video helpful, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. I'm going to apologize for my voice. I'm just getting over head cold that I seem to have caught in Nashville. Alright, now on these Lexus vehicles, they put plastic over everything. So you can't see anything, but we need to get to the top of the strut. And they actually give us these little covers so we can get right down to the top of that strut. Same thing on this side. First thing we got to do after we get the car jacked up and secured is get this wheel off. After we get the wheel off, we're going to come up here and loosen the 3 bolts that hold the strut in from the top. We do not want to remove that center bolt. We're using quick struts, so if you take that off, you're going to release the spring pressure from your strut. So after we loosen the bolts in the top, we're going to come down here. We're going to have to remove the sway bar link, and we're going to remove the 2 bolts that hold the strut on the bottom. One thing that's common to run into on these is you get an impact or a socket on this, and the whole thing, the whole shaft just spins. So what you have to do is you can actually get a wrench on here and use an Allen to hold the stud while you remove it. What we ran into on this one was this was too stripped out to get it off of there. So I ended up just removing the bottom from the sway bar, and I'm just going to replace the sway bar link along with the strut. Alright, now we've got the 2 nuts off here. Now we need to remove this bracket, holds your brake line and your ABS line. Now, after that, what I'm going to do is use this jack to actually jack up on the control arm, which will raise this up and take the slack out of it, which allows us to remove those bolts. Now that we've got these 2 bolts removed, our bracket taken off, we can come back up top, finish taking these 3 bolts off. So here we've got the old versus the new. 130,000 miles on those old ones. They were due. This is what it looks like without the strut in there. Here's where it peaks up through the top. We'll get this new one thrown back in here and get it back together. Alright, we've got the new strut in. I've got my 2 bolts stuck through here. Easiest way I found to do this is I start at the top. I get the 3 nuts started on top just to kind of hold it in place. Then I come down, line my spindle up with my strut, and I'm able to line these bolts up and get them started. One thing that the aftermarket has done has made this a whole lot easier, and if this ever has to be done again, we'll make it a whole lot easier. These sway bar links that were stripped out, they have no way to hold the stud that runs through there except for that little bitty spot right on the front. What they've done on the aftermarket ones is actually put this nut on the back side Just makes life so much easier. One thing about replacing the sway bar is you're going to want to put it in on the bottom first, get it snugged up. And then what you'll see is it doesn't line up at the top. What you're going to have to do is come back with a jack and actually just jack up the control arm until you get that to match your hole here. Once you get it jacked up, it'll line up just fine. You can install your nut onto it, snug it down. Other than that, we are wrapping the front up here. I'm going to tighten this down. I've already tightened those. I've already tightened my bolts on the top, put my bracket back on. We're going to put this all back together and move on to the rear shocks. Alright, we're going to jump in and go ahead and get started on the back. Back is way easier to do, less technical, so let's jump into it. Just like before, first thing we got to do is get the wheel off. Next thing, we just got to get the bolt out of the top and then come right down here and get the bolt out of the bottom. What I'm going to do is just use my impact on one side and a wrench to hold the other. Alright, so we got the shock out of there. What I actually ended up doing is just taking that bracket off with the shock. I've already got the new one on here. Actually, when you look at the back side of this shock, that nut is actually welded on there, so you don't even have to get a wrench on the back side. This one was super tight and rusted on, so it was easier just to take this whole bracket off so I could get it up on the bench and get it swapped out. We'll go ahead and get this put back in here.